Okay, well, welcome back to 2024 to this first session today on Microsoft 365, an overview of the apps available for you in the Microsoft 365 suite of apps. We acknowledge this land that we meet on today is the traditional lands for Kaurna people and that we represent their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respects to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia present here. I will just ask if people can put their mics on mute. However, please feel free, if you've got a question, to unmute and pipe up or type into the chat. However, if I miss the chat, I do have Lynn from my team here on the call as well today, so she'll be monitoring the chat for me as well. But if I do miss your question in the chat and no one's answering, please just come off mute. It might be that we just haven't seen it. I do like to start off with a handy tip. Because I do know that some people aren't lucky enough to be working on two screens. This webinar isn't that hands-on, it's more of an overview showing you what's possible, but there are some hands-on sections towards the end of the session. So if you need to be working in the app and seeing what I'm doing, if you've got a Windows machine, you can press the Windows key and either the right or the left arrow, and that allows you to split your screen. And with that, I think I will stop sharing this presentation and I will share my computer screen instead. Okay, so there's several ways you can access all the Microsoft 365 apps through the department. Firstly, if you come to the EdPass portal, which is this address here, you can access all the Microsoft apps if you move down to the productivity and collaboration section. So you can see the M365 portal here, which gives you access to all the apps, but you can also use the individual tiles to access all the suite of apps that we have available. If you're using Edge, there's another way you can access the apps as well, and that's through this icon here to the right of our screen, the M365 logo. And when you click on that, that gives you the top apps that Microsoft thinks you might be using, plus this home button that brings you to the M365 home. So I'm just going to click on there, and then we've got into our home. Now, when you get to your home, you'll see some recommended items in the top. These are items that you've worked on or that have been shared with you. So this is a test account, so I don't have a lot of things that have been shared with me. So it's mostly things that I've been working on. But if you have, if you belong to lots of teams or have lots of people sharing things, you might find in here documents that you're not the owner of, but you have access to. But where we want to go is down here in the left menu. And if we click on the apps, that brings us to the apps homepage. And if we click on all apps here in the right, we can see all the apps that you have access to through the department. So today we're going to have a look at some of these apps and how schools are using these apps. And then we'll hopefully end the session with some of the accessibility tools that Microsoft has. So the first app that we're going to briefly look at is Outlook. So hopefully most people are familiar with Outlook and what it can do for you. Over here we've got our inbox, but if you go to the calendar in here, this is where you can also create events, and also you've got a bookings page in here as well, which allows you to set up bookings for people to book your time. Back in the apps, the next app we're going to have a very quick look at is OneDrive. Now, OneDrive is an online cloud storage platform, and we're just going into there. And again, the home page has changed recently. When I click on OneDrive, I see all the files that I might have access to, so that either my files or their files that have been shared with me. And then I've got some options down the side here. So if I click on my files, I can see all the files that I've stored online. So storing files online, what does that mean? That means that instead of when I'm working, saving my work to my local machine or saving my work to a USB or an external hard drive, I have the option to save my files to Microsoft OneDrive. And that means that I can now access these files from whatever device I'm working on. So that might be my computer, or it might be my phone, or it might be an iPad. And I can work on these and they'll be saving in one place. So I'm not having to deal with lots of different versions of files. Now you've got 1 terabyte of space on OneDrive, which is quite a lot of space, and that allows you to save all your work-related files, which are what we call me files. So OneDrive, although it's got this shared bit section here, these are primarily for files that we're working on, and there are files. We might share a file out for review, but we're not collaborating on these files. There's lots of other aspects of OneDrive which we're not going to get into today, but Lynn is running a webinar on Wednesday about OneDrive. I will though mention in here that this section here called shared, this is files that I've shared with people, but in OneDrive you can see I've shared this one, or John shared this with me because it lives in John's place. I do have the option to stop sharing these files at any time. So although they're shared at the moment, if I realise this isn't a good file to share, for example, I can stop it and then access will stop for everyone. Okay, the other thing that's really cool about OneDrive is that I can see different versions that I've been working on. So say I was doing this information report, access it from my files. So let's go in. Say I was looking at this file here. I can see this thing called version history, which allows me to see, in this case, this file's only been saved once, but it allows me to see how many times a file has been shared or saved, and then I can restore a previous version. Now this is really handy if you've got a student come to you who has lost all their work, their file's blank. If they've been working on it and saving it in OneDrive, you should be able to go in and restore a previous version. Okay. The next app we're going to have a look at, I just mentioned briefly that you've got access to online versions of Word and PowerPoint and Excel, but we won't go into those at the moment. But the next app we're going to have a look at is something called OneNote. So OneNote is an online notebook. So you might be still using, or in the past have used, one of those yellow spirally notebooks with all the file sections. OneNote is an electronic version of this. Again, these can be personal OneNotes or they can be shared. So I'm just going to go in and have a look at an example. OneNote is an online app, but also a desktop app. And this is an example of one that I'm working on with other members of staff. And this is where we're storing our staff meeting minutes. So the beauty of having things in a OneNote rather than individual files stored in a team is that I can click in here and I can quickly click through the different agendas without having to go in and open up a new file or folder. I can also, if I go back in here, you see I've got some hyperlinks. So I can link to other pages within the OneNote, and then that takes me to the page really quickly, rather than having to open up lots of files all the time. OneNote is also great for teaching. So if you have a class team, for example, that comes with a class notebook. That's a particular type of notebook to help you collaborate with your students in your team. Okay, let's go back to the apps. So the next app we're going to have a look at is called Sway. And Sway is an online presentation tool. I'll just go into here. So this is what Sway looks like. It's really easy to use, and here's some examples of how Sway is used. So lots of schools now are using Sway as a newsletter. The reason why it's quite nice to use as a newsletter is that you can share Sways with external people. So that means you can share a link with families, and families can access this. Lots of families these days are viewing things on mobile phones. And Sways are what we call responsive, meaning that, as you saw, the wording changed when I changed the size of my screen. So this makes it really friendly for parents to look at on mobile phone devices. The other nice thing about Sways is that you can embed things such as videos. So again, if you've got a video clip of students working that you want to share with families, you don't want to post it up on YouTube, you can embed it in a Sway and families can access this. And you can also embed things like forms. So this is an example. This school wanted people to volunteer for Grandparents' Day, and we've got this form embedded here that they can fill out and submit straight into this Sway. Another nice thing about Sway is that there's these things called stacks. So instead of having 10 community announcements at the end of a newsletter, you can have a stack so parents can just click and flick through the different things that are going on rather than scrolling through endless pages. A couple more examples for Sway. So this is an example of a presentation that could be used for a PD session. Oops. So you can use it as a PowerPoint type thing at the front, but it's got some nice features which allow you to embed videos and graphics and things like that. Or students could use it to create their own presentations or own portfolios. So this is one based on some work that Seton students do when they create their portfolios for their Year 10 and Year 11 studies. And again, Sways, because they can be shared with external parties. The last thing that's really nice about Sway is if I send a PDF out, which is a newsletter, I might not actually get any details around who's opened that email up and who's looked at that PDF newsletter. Whereas in Sway, I can't see who's opened it, but I do get some analytics around how many people have opened it and also how in-depth these reads have been. So you can see this first one, I've had 137 views, and out of those views, only 18 people read it in depth, 14 people read it quickly, and 105 people just glanced at it. So that's some powerful data which tells you about where you need to put the key information and also whether your newsletters are actually being read or whether people are just opening them, looking at the first section and then closing them again. So that's some powerful analytics you can get from Sway. Okay, so the next app we're going to talk about can also be shared externally, and that's Forms. So Microsoft Forms, oops, let's try again. Microsoft Forms, if you've ever used things like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, is a program, an app that allows you to create quizzes and forms and also polls. This can be shared externally, which is great. So that means that your students can create surveys or quizzes for community members, for example, if they're doing their research project, or even if they're collecting data for maths, etc. But also it means that you can share them as for school administrative reasons with community members. So we've got a few here that we're just going to have a look at. The first one is a registration form for canteen volunteers, and this one's external. I've got some questions that I've put in which are mandatory. That's why they've got those red stars next to them. And in this one, if I do preview, you can see if I submit that I can help daily, it's got some extra questions for me to add. So that's called branching. This one here is an example of how you might use forms as a form of formative assessment for your students. So this is the back end of the form, and you see I've got some quiz questions in here. I've got what question is correct so that it will self-mark for me. But because this one's formative, I want to give my students some extra support if they get the wrong answer. So I've got some extra questions in here that provide some extra information to try and support those students. So again, if I go to preview and click on start, if I've accidentally, well, not accidentally, I don't know the correct answer, it takes me to this one and I can try again, which will take me back up to the top. Oops, or I must have done that wrong. Or I can repeat my questions and then I can see what's happened in there as well. Another thing about forms, which is quite nice, is you do get some nice analytics in the back end of forms as well. So I'm just going into one of my forms here. And this is a form we sent out for feedback after Minecraft training. So you can see there's 107 responses in here. And when I click in here, I get a nice summary of those results. Now this is all live, so if someone was to respond to this form right now, I'd say those response numbers change up the top. So I get some nice quick graphs to give me a visual indication of my data. Also, if I've put in questions that require people to write responses, I get some nice word clouds in here. And so it's a really nice way to get an in-depth understanding of your data with a quick glance. You can also, with Microsoft Forms, open in Excel, which would download the data for you to use or your students to use. Okay. Any questions so far? Everyone's been very quiet. Please don't forget to type in the chat if you've got some questions in the chat as well. Okay, so the next app we're going to look at very, very briefly is Microsoft Teams. Let me put in that. So Microsoft Teams is a platform for doing video conferencing or video webinars like we're doing now, but it's also got a whole lot of other features that you can use. If you haven't found it already, there's a chat button up here, and this allows you to chat with anybody within the department. My team seems to be a bit slow, so it's not moving to chat at the moment. But sorry, when I said anyone within the department, that's staff members. So you're not able to chat with students, but any staff member that has an @schools email address, you should be able to find in chat. There's 4 types of teams. So you can see here, I've got a mixture of teams that don't have anything with them, or a PLC team, or a staff team, or these ones here, which are class teams. So if I click on join or create team, oops, let's try again. I think my team is struggling today. If I click on join or create team and create team, I get the option of those 4 different teams that I could create. And they're all structured slightly different. So if I was using teams with my students, I would choose a class. And then we have in the past recommended other team for all other teams. However, there's a new teams that has just come out, which means that these 2 teams work better as well. I will just go into a class team just so you can see what a class team looks like. So this is the team I could use with my students, and it's got a whole lot of sections down the side here which are pre-built. One of them is a section called classwork, and this is where I can set up some information about the different units I might be teaching. I can add documents and presentations in here that the students might need to use with that unit of work. And this icon here indicates that I've also set up an assignment that the students can complete as well. So class teams allows you to set up these assignments. I'll just go in and edit it. So again, you can see you can add text, you can add rubrics, and you can also add documents for the students to work on. As well as using Teams for chat, another really useful use of Teams is for files. So if you're working with teachers, let's try a different team. We'll try one that I've got something in, hopefully. Let's try this one. If you're working with a PLC, with your teachers who are teaching the same kind of thing, you might want to have a team where you have all your planning documents, or you might have a school team already set up for that as well. So I mentioned earlier that OneDrive was for your personal files. If they're files that you're wanting to collaborate on, we recommend that you store them in Teams. So you can create a team just for you and your colleague. The reason why we suggest that you use Teams instead of OneDrive is that if your colleague was to win the lottery and decide to go on a cruise for 12 months and was unreachable, or left the department, all the files that they'd shared with you would cease to exist. Whereas if they put them in a team and shared them with the team, you'll still have access to them. Okay, now the next app we're going to briefly look at is one called Whiteboard. And Whiteboard is what it says. It's an electronic whiteboard. You can also use whiteboards in a Teams meeting. I will go in and do a new whiteboard and just show you some of the templates that are available, because there is templates specifically for learning that are quite handy for you to just pull out if you need to in your lessons. So for example, KWL, use this template, put it in, and it's already got those sections set up. and then I can easily add notes. Whoops. And type in there etc. You can see in here, if I zoom in, it's also got my name in there, so you can see which students have contributed to which bits of the whiteboard, which is really handy if you're reviewing it afterwards. Do note though, because this is a live notebook, after the lesson's finished, you might want to go in and change the settings, or you can export it. If you export it, that means that the whiteboard is still going to stay live, but you get a snapshot, so you can export it as a JPEG file, an image file. Okay, so I think we're almost, we've got a couple more apps that we're going to look at. So the next one I'm going to briefly mention isn't showing in here, but I'm going to go into my personal apps so you can see it. So this is Bookings, which I mentioned briefly before in Outlook. This allows you to set up a bookings page with external parties. So here I've got some examples of how you might use it for freeway interviews. And if I go into this one, you can see here I've got a whole bunch of teachers that are my staff. If I go to the bookings page, this is what I'd share with parents. If I click on there, this is what the parents would see. They can see what they want to book. So one session I've set up is 20 minutes and one session is 30 minutes. And then they can see the availability. So if someone books this time, that would disappear and they just see these 2 times here. So I can book that in and add my details and book. This is really good because it gives you a lot of flexibility in that you can set how long meetings or interviews go for. You can set the intervals in between. So if I want to have a 5-minute break in between each 20-minute interviews, I can set that as well. And I can also, if one of my staff can't work, well, one isn't available at certain times, we can go in and change that. So this one's bookable. Well, at the moment she's bookable, but we can change when individual staff are bookable, so it's not a blanket time for everyone. So that's bookings. The next one as well is Power Automate. Oh no, I'll just zoom in. So Power Automate is a really powerful app. What it allows you to do is it allows you to automate processes that you do regularly. So for this example here, when I get an email, if I flag it to say it's important, what this flow, and that's what we're building in Power Automate, they're called Flow. What this flow allows me to do is it gets the information from the email, changes it to some text, and then it's connected to this app that we haven't looked at yet called Planner, and it will take the information from the email and create me a task in Planner so that I know it's like my to-do list of things I've got to do. So instead of me, when I get the email, going in, copying the text, going into another app, Planner, pasting the text in, Power Automate has allowed me to do that automatically by just clicking one button. Now these things, although they're very powerful, do take a bit of work to set up in the beginning. And as a department, there's not a lot of support for these things, but we do have some basic support for you on those. Well worth exploring if that kind of thing is really exciting for you and you have some time. Okay, I think we've just got 2 more apps or 3 more apps to look at. So lists here, again, probably when I was a teacher, I didn't use lists, but I probably would use lists if I was still in the classroom today. Lists allow you to simply create, similar to an Excel spreadsheet, a list of different things, but you can do some really cool things with them, like drop downs and have them connected to different lists. So there's, again, a bit of that automation behind it as well. They're a bit safer than Excel spreadsheets in that if you're sharing them within a team, it's much harder to delete and muck up things in SharePoint lists than it is in Excel spreadsheets. So I'm not sure if you heard or whether I'd frozen, but if you've used Stream prior to last year, you might have been using something called Classic Stream, and Classic Stream is being retired at the end of March, which means that any videos that you might have had on Classic Stream will be deleted forever unless you download them yourself. So if you have used Classic Stream before, have a check to see whether you need to download any videos. If you've never used Stream before, Stream is a bit like OneDrive in that it's a place to show you all the video recordings or video files that you have saved in OneDrive or in Teams. So in here you can see I've got a video recording that was obviously a Teams meeting. And that's showing up in here for me. And I've also got a couple of videos, or I think these are all meetings in here. You can do screen recordings from within Stream, so that's quite handy. You can also record your camera. So if you need students to record videos and have themselves speaking, or they can do this within Stream and create videos. If you use this, there's a whole lot of different features that you can include, so you can have your PowerPoint presentation behind you and things like that for recording. Again, like with OneDrive and Teams, any videos that have been shared with you will pop up in this screen. So don't be alarmed if you see videos of meetings that you've attended that you didn't press the record on. It's just that you have access to that video, and that's why it will show up there. Okay, and I think that is the end of the apps overview. So for the last little bit of this session, I wanted to show you some of the accessibility tools that are available across a wide range of the Microsoft apps. Now, these used to only be in the online version of the apps, but now lots of them are also available in the desktop version as well. But I'm going to stick to the online version, just hopefully, so that we can get through this bit of the webinar without too many other hiccups. So this bit, if you can, I'd love you to join in with. So if you haven't already, if you can go to the M365 page, so if you've got Edge open, you can click on that one there and go to the home. If you don't have Edge open and you're using Chrome, you can always get it through the EdPass website as well. And in there, I'm just going to go to Word. And I'm just, for this, going to go to a blank document. Now, there's two really cool tools that we're going to have a quick look at. One of them is called Dictate, and the other is called Immersive Reader. So we have a look at Dictate first. It's this one here, and it's got that microphone logo. If you're using the desktop app, you might not find it in the home, you might find it in a different tab. And if I click on dictate, it will come up and it will say it's listening. And if I start talking, hopefully it's going to work for me. We might just have to change the microphone. Let's try that instead. Then hopefully when I speak, it's going to record. And I don't think it's going to do it for me because I had those troubles and had to restart my computer. But normally, if you click on the dictate, it should listen to what you're saying. We'll try one more time. And it should record what you're saying. Let's try this one instead. Just seeing whether this is going to work. And it looks like, as always in live demonstrations, it's not going to work for me. But hopefully you'll be able to check that one out yourselves. It does do other languages as well. So if you're a teacher of a different language, you can go into the settings and change the spoken language. In fact, I do recommend you change it from US, which is the default, to Australian anyway. Let's say I wanted to say something in French. If I put in the French one, because I can speak in French and save, and I speak, it will put in what I'm saying in French. Donc, il va dire ce que je dis, and it will record it in that language that I'm speaking in. Like anything, you need to go back and read and edit it. But this tool is particularly useful for students who have trouble getting their thoughts down on paper, or in this case, typing their thoughts out. So it's a really good tool to introduce those students to who have lots of ideas that are absolutely fine talking about things, but struggle organising those ideas into written text. They can come here, they can use the dictate, they can get all those ideas down, and then they can go back and organise them into something that is structured and makes sense. The next one, and I'm not sure if this is going to work for me either, is Immersive Reader. So let's just go into the View tab. Now, Immersive Reader, you'll see this logo in lots of apps. So it's available in Teams, it's available in PowerPoint, it's available in Forms, it's available in Minecraft as well. And Immersive Reader was developed by Microsoft to help students with dyslexia. Now, if you're going to give this one a go, you do actually need to have some text on the page. It won't work unless you've got some text on the page. So I'm just going to go into this tab here, and I'm just going to put in Wikipedia article of the day and get some text, hopefully. Feature article. Well, let's get something. And let's just copy that text there. And then I'll go back into my Word document and paste that in. So Control-C and Control-V to paste that in. Now, I realised I didn't share my sound, so I'm just going to stop sharing and reshare again so that we can get the sound in. And hopefully that works now for us. And if I click on that Immersive Reader button now, what it's going to do is it's going to change that text so it's easier for people to read. If I press the play button,
Never Forget You is a song recorded by American singer Mariah Carey.
Read that back. Now,
for her
again,
first
I can't hear
album
what it's saying,
Music
so hopefully it is saying something. If I go up here, I've got some other options. So in text preference, if it's really hard for me to see, I can increase the font size. I can increase the spacing or decrease the spacing. And these settings will all stay with me on the device or whatever device I log into if I log in with my @schools email. I can change the font, and believe it or not, Comic Sans is easier for dyslexic students to read. And then I can also change what the screen looks like. So I can change it to something that makes me able to read it easier. Doesn't matter if your students are dyslexic or not, this is a fantastic tool to help students. In here, you can turn on the different parts of speech as well. So again, if you're teaching a lesson out the front, you can use Immersive Reader on your whiteboard out the front and use Immersive Reader to help you show the different parts of speech, for example. It also can break those words up into syllables. Back in text preferences, it's not letting me show you, but yeah, it's in reading preferences. So there's a thing called line focus that it does as well. So again, if you've got students that get overwhelmed when they see a big chunk of text on the screen, they can use the line focus so that they're only seeing a certain section of text at a time to help them focus on their reading. There's a picture dictionary. So if I hover over the word, it will give me a picture clue. And then also there's this translate. So again, if you're working with students where English is an additional or a second language, this might help them. Also, if you're working with families where English is not spoken, or it is a second language or an additional language, again, I'm going to choose French because I can speak French. You can put in a language. If you choose by word, it would just translate the word. So it might be that the student just needs a little bit of support for certain words. Or you can also translate the whole document. Now, if I press play here, you'll hear
Never Forget You est une chanson enregistrée par la chanteuse
should now
américaine Mariah
hopefully be
Carey pour son
speaking in
troisième album.
French to you. Notice that You Never Forget, that's the title, so it's kept that in English. It isn't perfect, but AI translators are getting more and more, or better and better these days. So they're pretty good in terms of doing the translation. Another thing in here, which I was hoping to do a demonstration of, but seeing as my microphones and my devices are not cooperating, I don't think I can do the test, but I'll show you what it is Reading Coach. This is fairly new, it came out halfway through last year. What this does, it probably won't work because it won't hear me speaking, but what it does is it allows students to practice what they see on the screen and record themselves, and then it will pick out about 5 words that they think they need to practice. It will give them a fluency score as well. I'll see whether it will work, but I don't think it will. You try. Yeah, so it's not even letting, let's see. So it'll count down and then we have to read it. So Never Forget You est une chanson enregistrée par la chanteuse, etc., etc. And I don't think it will give me any score because I don't think my microphone's working. But if it was, it would give me that detail there and then the words to practice. So again, that one's really good to introduce students to. They can practice that independently. If you don't have one-to-one devices, providing they've logged on with their @schools email, they can still, it will still record that for them. So in PowerPoint, a bit like the reading coach that I just went through, there's a thing called Rehearse Coach. So if I've got a PowerPoint that I've set up and I want to practice presenting before I have to give my presentation to the class, myself as a teacher or students, if I go into slideshow, there's this Rehearse with Coach. And when students click on that, it will come up with a screen and click on Rehearse. And then when you talk to the slides and go through the slides, again, it will give you a fluency rating. It will tell you if you're saying lots of ums. So if I did it for this webinar, it would pick up that I've said a lot. And it will give you some advice on how to improve. So it might say speed up, or you're speaking too fast, or you're reading off the slides, try not to read off the slides. So again, that's a really good support that you can introduce students to, especially if they need to practice presenting or they've never presented in front of the class before as well. And I think that just about brings us to the end of this session. So to finish off, there's a few resources that I wanted to share, and also, if I can find it, a feedback survey for you to fill in as well, if I can find the link. Or I might get Lynn to have a look if she can find the link. But we see how we go, otherwise we'll email it out after. So I'm just going to go into Chrome because I know I've got this set up with my correct bookmarks. Again, apologies. So there's a few resources that we like to point you to. If you've never used any of these apps or you've used them a little bit and you want to find out more, there's a great self-learning tool that you can use, which is the Microsoft Learn Educator Center. This is free. You can set up an account. In fact, we suggest that you do. Use your @schools email, and then there's a whole lot of different, not only product guides which talk you through the different products, but there's a whole lot of different courses that you can do, educator programs that are specifically designed for educators. So if I click on this one, for example, and start learning path, this one here it's quite a long one. This one should take 5 hours, and it will guide me through all these different modules around how I can use Microsoft products in my teaching. So that's that one. Another resource that you can access is our YouTube channel. So we often create lots of short videos that talk you through how to do different things. So if you haven't already, have a check or have a look at that. There's lots of playlists that we create. Some things are longer, but we try and keep our videos quite short, just showing you how to do something specific. And they're all catered to our tenancy, so whatever we show you should work. We do try and update them, but sometimes we're not quick enough, but that's a resource that you can access. And the last one is a Teams channel. So the other thing you can do is you can join the M365 App Support and Collaboration team. So this is a team that's open to all staff in the department, which our team monitor, but also we get lots of people from all over the state answering people's questions. So I'll just grab the link to that and put that in the chat as well. Oh yeah, sorry, it wasn't 5 hours. It should be, yes, for the Microsoft Learn, Lynn's just put in there, although it said 5 hours, it's broken up into lots of chunks. So in this team, we've got channels where you can post things on the different apps, and we also put in announcements around things that are happening, but also information about different apps as well. So you're welcome to join that team. And that brings us to the end of our time. I don't know if we have found the link to the survey. So we send that out when we send out the link to this recording. If you can please fill in the feedback, that would be great, because that helps us improve our training sessions. But it also will provide a certificate for you guys as well to record your learning. We will stay around for a little bit longer if you have any more questions. Feel free to come off mic. Otherwise, good luck for 2024. It's always busy at the start of the year, but hopefully it's a smooth sailing year for the rest of the year.